You win this race in your mind before you ever win it with your legs. And it's the same in business. You're going to win with your mind before you ever win it with all the tactical stuff that you do. If you play the long game, you're going to win. I went from not being able to swim 2 laps in a pool to top 100 in the world in my age group in about 7 years.
Welcome to the Thought Leader Revolution with Nikki Ballou. Join the revolution. There's never been a better time in history to speak your truth, find your freedom, and make your fortune. Each week, we interview the world's top thought leaders and learn the secrets of how they built a 6 to 7 figure practice. This episode has been brought to you by eCircleAcademy.com, the proven system to add 6 to 7 figures a year to your thought leader practice.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the podcast, The Thought Leader Revolution. I'm your host, Nikki Ballou, and boy, do we have an incredible guest for you today. Today's guest is a thought leader's thought leader. He's an entrepreneur's entrepreneur, and he's an athlete's athlete. I'm speaking, of course, of none other than the one, the only, the legendary Dave Lukas. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Hey, Nikki, it's great to be on with you and everybody in the audience as well. Thanks for having me today.
Good to have you here, my man. So, brother, the folks who listen to this show are entrepreneurs. They're the brave men and women who go out there and work and strive to make their dreams come alive. They come here to learn, but they're not here because of me. I'm here every week. They're here because of you. They want to learn from you. But before they can open their hearts up to you, they got to get to know you. How'd you get to be the great Dave Lukas?
It's a 25-year overnight success. As most of us are, right? So I'll try to make it quick for you. I been an entrepreneur ever since I was a little kid, actually. I started my first business, I like to joke, when I was 5. I was in the neighborhood and, went to my mom and said, hey, I want to make American flags out of construction paper and sell them to the neighbors. And you'll love this story because it has a Canada angle to it. So I did my thing, I'm a kid, 5, 6 years old, and I create all my American flags, and man, it's 100% close rate. I got my little red wagon. I'm up and down the street. Everybody I go to, 5, 10 cents a flag, knocking them down. I get to the last house on the street, and it's kind of that creepy house. It's the one that, you don't really see the people much. Window shades are always down, and I muster up the courage to walk up to the door and knock on the door, and it seems like forever. It's probably just, 10, 15 seconds, but this nice, little middle-aged lady answers the door, and I do my pitch. Seems like it's an eternity. After I do my pitch, I just stand there in silence and just deadpan. She looks at me and she goes, no, thank you, honey, we're Canadian. And she shuts the door in my face. Not to be lost, though, I went back home and told my mom about that, and we made a Canadian flag. So I went back to her and sold her Canadian flag. And that was the beginning of my entrepreneur career. And I've been fortunate to have some very successful businesses. I've hit the Inc. 5,000 list 7 times, and I've had ones that have failed along the way too. In fact, my first business out of college failed miserably. Within a year, I was barely making $1,000 a month on it, and working 3 other jobs, sleeping about 4 hours a night, trying to make it all work. And ultimately walked away from that and learned some great lessons. Went into the corporate world for about 6 years and learned a lot what I didn't know about how to build and run organizations and that sort of thing. And then went back on my own and primarily have been in the software space for the rest of my career, building and selling software companies. And so that's kind of where I ended up. I didn't go to school for that or anything. As we know, as entrepreneurs, you just kind of fall into things, and I kind of found my niche there. And along the way, started a podcast called The Misfit Entrepreneur, which is listened to in over 100 countries. I've been doing that about 10 years, and also have a investing education company that I've had for about 20 years, where we teach entrepreneurs and people like how to create passive income from markets without spending a lot of time doing it. So it's just one of my passions.
I love that, man. That all sounds super califragilistic. So walk us down memory lane. Talk to us about your first software exit, how that company came about, how you grew it, how you turned it into an exit.
Yeah, so the last company that we had an exit in, was a company called Grasp Technologies, and it was a unique company. It was a business intelligence software that was actually centered in the travel space. And if you could think about it, travel's an interesting world. Um, no systems, they're all built on from the 1960s. Like they're all like the basis of travel is built on, these big mainframes and stuff that were created in the 1960s. And so as a result, like all the data is disparate in the space. So nothing talks, no, like there's all this disparate data and ways that people do things that doesn't line up or anything. So you can think of it this way, like if I'm IBM and I got 200,000 travelers traveling the world right now, right? And I've got maybe 60 travel agencies that I work with across the world to service those people. They're all on different systems. They all use different verbiage. They all, put things in different fields, all that stuff. It's a mess. How do I know what's going on at any one point in time, especially if an emergency happens or something like that? That's what we did. We came in and we brought it all together and made it so that you could see almost real time what was happening across all of that in an easy to understand and use way, right? So that's the problem we solved for and grew really, really well. I ended up doing business in about 50 countries. And, coming out of COVID, because COVID really crushed the travel industry, but we actually thrived during COVID. And probably the best decision I made was to triple down on sales efforts during COVID. So, where everybody was pulling back and kind of, trying to just survive, we looked at it as a way for us to gain market share, and we did. Gained a massive amount of market share.
Okay,
because we
so you got to break that down, man. How the heck did that happen?
Well, the nice thing about the place that we were is that even if you had one traveler, and you were using our software, you needed our software, right? So the first thing we did is we said, hey, all right, to all of our clients, we understand your business overnight, 95% cut down. But you still need our software for that 5%. So we're going to give you a price break. So we did a price break, for a period of time to alleviate some of the pressure on them. And then at the same time, we had gotten ourselves in a good position prior. And so we had a good, like emergency fund and all that stuff that we could continue to really, do our thing the way we wanted. Then, as a lot of entrepreneurs know in the United States, PPP came along. We were able to get eligible for some of that, and that helped out too. So what we did is we said, well, where's the opportunity? And the opportunity at the time was to really, double down on gaining that market share, marketing, and helping the industry. Because again, you had all these travel agencies and corporates that still needed to know what was going on, and they needed solutions. And so we came in and we said, look, we're going to give you a COVID pricing tier to start to help you out. But once we get past this, the price goes up to X, right? And I think people were really appreciative of that. And nobody else was really pushing and doing that in the industry. Everybody else was, again, trying to like pull back, cut costs, do that sort of thing. And so we accelerated it. And so then coming out of that, we were, we more than doubled in size and everything else during that time. And that allowed us to be in a really good position. And then, we were acquired shortly after. So that was one of the best business decisions that, I had ever made in to affect the business like that. It was just, it's contrarian, but it was what was the right thing to do. Right.
That's pretty clever.
We made sure to take care of all of our clients. So we kept all the retention of our clients too, which anybody who's ever dealt in software or sold a software company before, it's not just your growth and your ARR, MRR, but it's also your retention that matters.
Your retention is everything, brother. Without that, you're screwed, right? You're pretty
the average
screwed.
Retention on that company was over a decade for our clients. That's how good we were.
Damn.
So, yeah.
Damn. So how did you go from there to starting an investment education company?
Well, I actually started the investment education company 20 years ago.
Okay.
So as I started to have some success, first in the corporate world, I was fortunate to have some early success there in the sales side and bought myself some autonomy and started to pile up extra cash. So I started investing in real estate. And then I wanted to diversify and started to look at the markets. And the thing that really, it was like an epiphany after trying to make money in the markets for about a year, right? And kind of breaking even, which is what most people do. Now, I did all right, but it wasn't where I thought I could be. And so the epiphany that I had was when I really looked at like the stock markets. If you buy a stock, let's just say you know nothing about markets or anything. You just go like I'm going to go buy a company stock, right?
Yeah.
What most people don't realize is that you have a 33% chance of making money. Because
Really?
the stock can go up, a stock can go up and go down, or it can stay the same.
Yeah.
It has to go up for you to make money. So that's 33% chance just out of the gate. And so
Makes sense.
it made a lot of sense to me. Like, okay, I'm not getting the results I want because I'm just randomly buying what I think are, hot stocks, hoping they're going to go up, and hope isn't a strategy for anything. And so when I looked at it, like the epiphany was, all right, if I have a 33% chance of buying, who has the 67% chance? Because that's the other side of that. That's who I want to be. And if you do some investigation, the other side of that is the seller, right? And in markets, there are a few types of trades that you can do that allow you to be the seller without having to, I started investigating. I'm like, how do I become a seller? Well, I can take a company to market. I wasn't doing that anytime soon, right? I can do it as maybe get in an IPO as a accredited investor. I wasn't at that point yet, right? And so it was like, well, how do I be a seller? Well, there's a few different types of trades. One of them is what's called a cash secured put. Another one is called a covered call. And there are things like credit spreads and things like that. So as I started to investigate, I started with what's called cash secured puts. And it made a lot of sense to me coming from the real estate world, right? And owning real estate. Because when I'd buy real estate, I bought and owned for cash flow, right? So my goal was always to buy a piece of real estate at a below market price, right? And get good cash flow out of it. And as you've heard from real estate, you make money when you buy. Yeah. So the idea of a cash secured put, and this is the crazy thing, is it's effectively the same thing. So if I look at each stock or a stock as a piece of market real estate, right? And let's say the stock is selling for $30 a share. That's where it's priced at today. In the markets, I can come in and I can say, all right, I like that stock, but I will buy that stock at $22 a share. Okay, if and only if it's at that price in a specific time period, a month from now, 6 months from now, 3 weeks from now. There's options cycles for all that, and it's an options trade, right? But what I'm effectively doing is I'm saying, hey, I'll buy your $30 piece of market real estate for $22, right? Now that's a good bet. That's great, right? If you could get what's a $30 piece of market real estate for $22, hey, that's awesome. But here's the cool thing. I'm selling that right. And what happens when you sell?
Profit.
You get paid.
Yeah.
You get paid. And so what's cool is, and this is the crazy part, someone will actually pay me to buy it from them at $22 a share in the future. So that's like having a piece of real estate. Let's say you got a $100,000 piece of real estate and you walking into them and saying, you know what? I like your piece of real estate. I'll tell you what, I'll buy it from you for $80,000, but I want you to pay me to buy it from you at that price. So if you did that in the marketplace, you would probably get laughed out the door.
Yep.
Right? In the markets, you can do it every day. And that was the big epiphany. Like, holy crap, I can get paid to own a stock at a lower price. Now, here's the beautiful thing.
But
Let's say that
work? How does that work?
Well, because the person on the other side of that trade thinks that stock is going to be below the price that you're doing that at by the amount they're paying you for it. So let's say I'm selling the $22 put option, which is what it's called, right? So all I'm doing is saying, I'm willing to buy this at $22 a share if and only if that stock is at $22 on the date of my options expiration, right? So let's say I'm selling a month out, okay? So 30 days, right? They're going to pay me, I don't know, $100 for doing that, right? So you do, it's about a 5% return on your money. Now they think that the stock is going to be below $21. That's how they make money, right? But here's the thing. It's the sucker's bet because I already know I'm sitting there with a 67% chance of winning. You see, they're the buyer, I'm the seller. So I'm already winning just by the type of trade I chose to do. And, I'm setting my price 25% below where it's at. So for the stock to drop 25% in the span of 30 days or whatever is highly unlikely too, which, boosts your return. So it's how you enter and that sort of thing. And that's what we refined over the years to the point where I've got a 92% success rate for the last decade plus on our trades, So that's what we do. It's not sexy. It's not flashy. I'm not getting 5,000% returns or anything like that. I'm just stacking cash flow every single month, right? And so that's what we do. And that really came about because I started to have that excess cash. And then when I was working and I went into my first business, I was working 90 hours a week, but I wanted to put that cash to work without having to sit there and babysit like day traders do. They're looking for a tick. They're looking for,
Oh my God.
in and out in the same day. I didn't want to deal with that stuff. I didn't want to have to be
That's
glued to a
crazy.
screen. I wanted it to work for me while I slept and while I worked, so I didn't have to think about it. So, and the worst thing that happens is I get the stock at a cheaper price. And then it's fun because I can turn around and collect rent on my market real estate by what's called selling a covered call, which is selling someone the right to take it from me at a higher price in the future. It's just the opposite side of that trade. The technical term for that strategy is called the wheel. That's what it's called. Goldman Sachs, all those guys, right? You hear about their trade desks making all that money and everything every quarter. That's exactly what they're doing.
Really? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing around the margins of trading rather
Yep.
than actually creating something. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, so it's cool because you can run a business and do all that stuff and create that passive income, and make yourself 10, 20 grand a month while you're doing that if you've got a sizable amount, and worst thing that happens is you own a good stock at a lower price.
So, how much capital does one have to start out with to make 10, 20 grand a month?
If you want to do 10 to 20 grand a month, right, you're going to need a sizable capital amount because what happens is
What does that mean
the
in
stocks that
plain numbers?
you need at least six figures to do that.
So you
I
need
started with
100
three.
grand?
I started with 3 to 5 grand doing this though.
You started with
So-
5 grand.
Yeah.
Wow. How much of your time
So, and
did you put into like figuring all this out?
it's funny, the company we built around it is called 12-minute trading because we do it in less than 12 minutes a day. Initially figuring out how the strategies themselves and kind of stack like how we enter and when we enter and that stuff to boost that success rate to 90+%. That was refined over a couple of years of just kind of having fun, experimenting and playing on the weekends and that sort of thing. And then, I basically, people started hearing about my success and I track all my trades and do all that. And so people like, hey, would you mind sharing your trades with us, what you're doing and teach us? And so I created a newsletter service, which is what 12-minute trading is 12minutetrading.com. And so that's what people subscribe to. And every weekend I put out a market analysis with my trades and what I'm doing and stuff so people can learn and, help themselves figure out how to do this for themselves.
And you teach this to people. So you have a course.
Yeah, it's it's really, there's a course, but it's also the weekly instruction with me, updating, alerting on what I do and all that stuff so they can watch it in real time. And,
Damn.
I can't stop somebody from following what I do, but all I can do is show what I do with my live, trades basically and help them to understand and learn. So
That's pretty smart, brother. That's pretty smart.
yeah.
Smart.
I'm doing it anyways, you know what I mean? So I'm already doing it. Every weekend I sit down, I review my week for the trades and look at the markets and, plan my trades for the upcoming week. And most of the time I honestly trade Sunday nights and don't really trade the rest of the week, so set up my orders to fire, when the triggers hit type thing. So, so it's sharing that with others, but it's, years worth of experience and everything that have been put in that, really help accelerate people's success.
12minutetrading.com. I'll make sure we put that in the show notes. All right, let's talk about your podcast, The Misfit Entrepreneur. How'd that come to be?
So the Misfit Entrepreneur came about when my wife and I adopted our daughter from China a little over 10 years ago. And I never expected to do a podcast. Up in that point, I'd been on podcasts. Podcasts were starting to get popular then, right? It, wasn't even close to what it even is today. But I'd been guests on some. But the interesting thing is, I mentioned about that period where I had a lot of success early on and built myself some autonomy. And I went on about a 4-year journey where I went and learned from the best that I could get in front of. So I was fortunate. I got to sit down like directly across from Zig Ziglar and pick his brain. The Brian Tracy's of the world, a number of millionaires, several people worth half a billion, even a couple billionaires. The thing that I was looking for were patterns. Like what was it that made them successful, but also kept them there? And as I started to learn these things and put those into practice for myself, I had more success, and that's what helped propel me in the businesses that I had initially on, things like that. And ultimately, I wrote a book about it called The 10-Year Career. And probably the most powerful and most important chapter in that book is how we're conditioned. I know you and I talked a little bit about this, of how we were shaped a lot by, the influences, the things that happen to us in our lives. I always make the joke, like, you didn't come out of the womb and they're like, beautiful baby, too bad they'll never make more than 30 grand, right? It doesn't work like that. You're not like set to that when you walk out of the womb, right? So, like, what shapes how we think and how we act and our habits and the things that we do? Well, it's all these experiences and influences from the time we're born: parents, friends, family, media, culture, school, religion, all these different things that, specific incidents, things like that shape us, right?
Yep.
And a lot of the stuff we pick up is good, but there's some things that we can pick up that can be very debilitating to our potential and our success.
Yes.
And once you learn to recognize those things in your life and choose, whether to keep them or to replace them with what you want them to be, it's really the ultimate in personal power. So here I am, I get my daughter, she's 18 months old. She's got the only 3 pairs of pants that she's ever worn, only 3 shirts that she's ever had. And at 18 months old, she can't walk yet, and she has no teeth. At 18 months. And after 5 days of getting 3 good, nutritious meals a day, she was starting to be able to stand, like, would hold her hands and she'd be able to stand, and then teeth were starting to pop. And I would find myself, walking up and down the hotel hallways in China as we were, completing this whole process, each day, helping her get her legs underneath her. And it was just like hitting me, like, you're conditioning her right now. She's modeling this from you right now. She's hearing you and your wife say things right now that are going to impact her the rest of her life. Like, it's all happening. And so I said, man, there's got to be a way to immortalize all the incredible information that I've learned and from the amazing people I get to meet along the journey, so that Hannah, my daughter, can learn from her daddy and his misfit friends long after I'm dead and gone. Like, that was the thought that popped in my head, right?
Yeah.
And fast forward about 8 months later, we're home, we're a family, we're doing our thing, and it's just still in the back of my mind. I can't get rid of it. And you entrepreneurs know, if something sticks in the back of your mind long enough like that, you got to scratch that itch. So sat down over a weekend. I'm like, what am I going to do about this? Right? Do I write more books? Do I start a blog? And yeah, ultimately, I love the spoken word. It's how we pass things on from generation to generation, and how we've shared story, right? And I said, how hard can it be? So over that weekend, I hacked iTunes, put a splash page app, called a few buddies, got a few interviews in the can, and thankfully had a decent network. I sent it out to you next week, said I'm doing this now and would love your feedback. And it took off. Here we are, still doing it 10 years later. It's been ranked the top podcast and entrepreneur, all that stuff over the years, but the mission's still the same. It's to leave behind that treasure trove for Hannah. And it's morphed a little bit. And I really do believe that one great episode can change someone's life. There's somebody that will listen to each episode that I do, and the guest, somebody like you, or someone will share something that was really a missing link they needed to make all the difference for them in that moment. And that's the fun part.
One episode can change a life, and it can put somebody on a trajectory to a very powerful future that they couldn't even imagine before they heard someone give them permission to dream bigger, give them permission to see a future possibility that didn't even occur to them. God, way back in 2018, I had the good fortune to interview Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, right?
Yep.
I got to tell you, he spoke about influence and persuasion.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd written a book about it called Winning Bigly, right? And I bought the book and I read it before he came on. We spent an hour and 20 minutes together. It was one of the most magical conversations I ever had. He taught me in that short period of time more about joyful, ethical persuasion than anybody else had, than I'd learned in my life. I left there going, I'm excited to implement what this dude's taught me. Mm-hmm. And he also, at the end of the interview, just gave me an incredible compliment. And he said to me, you're one of the best that's ever interviewed me. This was one of the most enjoyable experiences I've ever had. I just wanted you to know that I never heard of you before today, but I'm really glad I came on your show. And I'm like, damn, Scott Adams thinks I'm good. Okay, this is great, man. This is awesome. This is awesome. And that day changed my life. That day changed my life at a lot of levels. What I learned from him, what he had to say about me, the affirmation of the work that I'm doing. And I had a couple thousand people that listened to it that reached out and said, this is one of the best episodes I've ever heard anywhere. Thanks for having him on, blah, 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 all this stuff.
That's awesome.
So, and I've had a few episodes like that, but that one's just one
Yep.
that really stood out for me.
Have you
And
continued to follow his journey and where he's at?
yeah, he's very ill right now. It's very,
Yeah, but you know what? He's still doing it.
he's
And
a stud. He's a stud.
He's still giving. He's given to the very end, man. It's if you're not following him like on X or something like that.
I
I mean,
am.
he's got stage 4. I'm just talking to the audience.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
got stage 4 cancer, and but he's still every week putting out great wisdom and everything. And yeah, it's really sad, but it's also bittersweet because the guy is a wealth of great wisdom.
Yeah.
So.
The way he's approaching life is like a
Mhm.
straight up utter savage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he is
Yeah.
like, yeah, I got cancer. Who gives a crap? Let's roll.
Exactly.
Let's roll.
It's awesome. It's
Yeah.
very inspirational.
Yeah, it is. It is. He's I reached out to him and I sent him a note saying, "Hey man, God bless you. God love you. I'm here. Whatever you need, blah, blah, blah." But God, and I got to interview him a second time, and that was also a lot of fun. But this man is one of the great geniuses of our time, and we're lucky that Scott Adams strode the earth. We're very, very lucky. So yeah, I agree. Anyways, I'm just wondering if there was an episode that was like that for you that maybe comes to mind.
It's like you. I've had a number of them over the years. Actually, I mean, I mentioned Zig Ziglar a little bit ago. I had Tom, his son, on, and
Oh yeah.
I asked Tom. Yeah, I asked Tom what the secret to success was, and he gave me one of the best answers ever. And I've continued to hear from people years on, like that one answer made a lot of difference. From the answer was you replace a bad habit with a good habit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Replace a
good.
bad habit with a good habit. Move to the next one, replace a bad habit with a good habit. Where will you be 30 days, a year from now, if you just keep replacing bad habits with a good habit? And I thought that was really good. So there's a number of them like that over the years at this point, because there's just hundreds and hundreds of episodes. But yeah.
Yeah. I'm in that range as well. We're over 700 episodes on the Thought Leader Revolution. I got to interview Tom a few years back as well, so he's a lot.
Yeah.
He's great. There's a man that I've interviewed. I have a second podcast. It's for men, and it's about men's issues. And this fellow's 72 years old. He's led an interesting life. He when he was a young man, he worked in Kuwait for a while. He visited my home country of Iran, which just blows me away. Not a lot of people in this day and age have done that. He built a company with his brother. And then he and his brother just couldn't work together anymore. So he split up working with them, and he got involved in coaching, helping men going through relationship distress, and then helping men that are dealing with other issues, family, career, blah, blah, blah. So I've had a really good year in a lot of respects, but doing well in our business and doing well with my bodybuilding journey, I took the eye off the ball in my relationship a little bit. And me and my lady we were going through a trough, not through an upswing. And I hired this guy because that's what he does, to sit down and work with us. And he was so good. It was one of the most intense hour and a halves I've ever spent with anybody doing anything. But he was so good. He came to both of us and he said, "I know you two guys love each other, but love isn't enough. You also need to be compatible, and compatibility is a choice. It doesn't just happen, right?" And he just went to both of us and he said, are you willing to give up being entitled, that she isn't doing this for me or he isn't doing this for me? And man, I sat there and I said, you know what? Yeah, I am. And I thought, oh my God, I felt like a void, a level of like, holy shit, there's a holy shit moment, right? And so did she. We got to the point where she said, yep, we're both willing to do this. And he delivered some wisdom to both of us. He said to me, you're holding a list on your woman on what she's done wrong, how she's done you wrong in these issues. He says, you're a man, stop doing that. Right? That's the first thing he just looked at me and said, you're a man, stop doing that. You don't get to do that. She gets to do that. You don't get to do that. I'm like, fuck. And then he looked at her and he said, you're going to him and trying to like unload all your problems on him for 2 hours at a time. You need women to do that with. He's a man. Next to him, he's got 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, he's done. And if you're doing this every day, that time shrinks to 10.
Yeah.
I told her that. Said, go get some woman in your life and stop coming to your man with this. He's not equipped to deal with it. And she stared at him going, okay. So we both kind of look at each other and go, I
Yeah,
guess
not to mention our
somebody to do this to us, right?
Our default as men is to solve the problem, and most of the time they don't want us to
They
solve
don't
it.
want.
They
Are
just
you
want us to
kidding
do
me?
it.
They'll be mad at you. Their problems give them status, man. Look at how big and shiny my problem is. Like, I mean, but like, and then when the conversation was over, we both, we sat, we talked, and we've both been actively working on implementing these new ways of being that he coached us to implement. And I'm not going to pretend or tell you everything's been perfect, but it's been way better. And my eye is on my relationship now for the first time in probably a year. Like, I'm actually actively like, looking, I got to be better, right? I got to be better, rather than, hey man, I'm great. There's nothing I need to do different. I'm awesome. I'm Nicky Ballou. Right? Same with her. She's like thinking, I got to be better. I got to do better. And I got to tell you, man, I've interviewed this guy on my men's podcast probably 5 times. And I wouldn't want to air everything she and I had to say on the podcast, but at some level, I wish that we'd recorded some of the coaching gave us, especially to me. Stop holding a list on your woman, and to her, stop bringing all your problems to him. Go find some women to take him to. I just thought that was straight up savagery, and it was really valuable for us as well. And I'm hopeful that someone coming here and listening to this podcast is going to listen to what you had to say about what you did in growing your software company and doubling down on sales at a time where everyone's thinking, oh my God, the travel industry, no one's going to do sales during COVID. And you said, nope, we're going to find a way. And you found a way to leave a legacy for your daughter that would be more than just about the things that you left her, but the lessons that you left her. And I think that's straight up awesome, bro. That's straight up awesome.
Thank you.
Like beautifully done. So you're doing an Ironman next week. Why don't you get into that and maybe some of the lessons that you've learned that are applicable in life and in business from that before we wrap.
How much more time do we have? Gosh.
Well,
so
as much time as you need, brother. Until 4 o'clock Eastern. That's my next podcast.
I fell into so I'll back up. Through college, I played football. So through college, I highly competitive, played football through college, and then coming out of college, I was it's like a void. Like it's even like if you've ever sold a business before and you try to take that year off. I made it 6 months for the first time around. So I couldn't make it the full year. You just you gotta. You've got, and I was, admittedly, I retired for the first time below, when I was under 40. So it's a little harder. But but coming out of college, I still had that competitive itch that I needed to scratch. So I started running. I'd never run more than like 2 or 3 miles. I played football, right? I was like all sprinting. And so started doing that, did half marathons for a decade or so. And, got pretty bored with that over time, and had done all the races and all that stuff and qualified and done things and everything. And so, just on a whim, actually, at the fitness center that I belonged to, they did an indoor triathlon. I signed up like the day before, and, it was like a 45-minute triathlon. Like, it's like shorter than what they would call a sprint. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I jumped in, I hadn't swam, like I swam on a swim team as a kid, and I jump in the pool and I'm like going a million miles an hour. I think I got like 2 laps in and I was doggy paddling. I ended up finishing like second out of 70 in this whole thing.
Damn.
And I was like, well, cool. There's, and it was fun because you go from different discipline to different discipline. And so, I'm like, this is cool. I'd like to do more. So what do? You sign up for an Ironman, right? You do a 45-minute triathlon. The next thing you do is sign up for an Ironman because that's like the pinnacle of the sport, right? So, and I had like 3 months to train for this thing, and I didn't even have a bike. Like, we did a spin bike indoors. I didn't even have like a bike outdoors or any of that stuff. So I got the stuff, and it was interesting because that Ironman was actually in my backyard here in Ohio. I live in Ohio, and they actually, my town is where they did it. So it was like, okay, cool, it's right there. Let's do it. And so I just remember I didn't know anything about the sport. I didn't have a clue what to do. I just swim, bike, run, right? So I get to the starting line for this thing. I jump in, I go, like, I, I finished. It was ugly, but I finished. And there was a million lessons that I learned at that point, but I caught the bug, right? And so now, 35, 40 of these events later over the years and multiple Ironman championships and, I've learned and this is, well, it relate to business. I've gotten to I came into this year ranked top 100 in the world in my age group.
Nice.
And so there's a number of lessons that, racing this race has taught me. The first is, and you could probably hear from that story, is if you play the long game, you're going to win. I went from not being able to swim 2 laps in a pool to top 100 in the world in my age group in about 7 years.
Oh.
Right? So, and that's the thing. Most people these days, I mean, we live in an instant society. I often joke, we stopped the microwave with 3 seconds left. We can't even wait 3 seconds anymore. Right? It's dopamine hit after dopamine hit, right? Yes. So those that played the long game, that just keep going, even if they're not as good, they'll outlast others.
Yes.
That quit. So the long game is where it's at because nobody's doing it anymore. Right?
Nobody. Nobody.
No. So that's one big lesson I've taken from this race. Another thing is the mental aspect. So even at the point of where I am, and there's 2 points to this, but even like getting to the level that I'm at, every single race at some point, my mind is going to scream at me to stop. My mind is going to scream at me that you can't keep going. My mind is going to tell me, like, you're going too fast. You can't do this, blah, 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 blah. Whatever that mental, like, limit that my mind is set to for that, at the time is going to come up during that race. Yep. And you win this race in your mind before you ever win it with your legs. And it's the same in business. You're going to win with your mind before you ever win it with all the tactical stuff that you do. Yep. Right. And so every time I know it's coming, I've got like a trigger. I've got trigger phrases and everything that I know. As soon as that hits, if I bust through that, not only am I going to probably have the best race that I've ever had, but I'm going to level up to the next level again. Right. Nice. And keep going. And that's one of the reasons I still do this, because I love hitting that point and leveling up, right, mentally. As a side note to that, I came into this year, like I said, ranked where I was. In February of this year, I woke up out of the blue in the middle of the night with pain so excruciating, it made me spasm so bad I fell out of bed, and then I couldn't get back in. I couldn't stand up. I tried to stand up, I'd fall back down. It was like I was paralyzed.
Jesus.
And turns out that the next morning, I literally crawled down the stairs from our bedroom wing in our house to the couch, and that's where I sat for the rest of the weekend. I literally pulled myself like army crawl to where I was, dragging my feet behind me. So it turns out that I had a disc protrusion that just the way it protruded hit a nerve. The femoral nerve, if anybody's ever had that, so bad that it took out my right leg, basically. I couldn't walk. I actually ended up not being able to walk for about almost 8 weeks. And so here I am, got the Ironman World Championships in September. I had 3 other races lined up before that and everything. And I'm into, I can't walk. Yeah. And so, so like for me, that was probably a bigger challenge than even a race at this point, because I'm staring down the barrel going, shoot, is this my life now? And I didn't want to do, I don't want any surgery. I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to find a way to come back. So it became nutrition. It became serious PT, to where over the next however many months up through to about May this year, I worked it and got it to a point where I can start to do things again. And, and then I really doubled down on the training and everything, and to this point to where I'm probably actually in better shape than I was before it. Knock on wood for this thing next week. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see if the thing can last to put together a whole race. For you guys that don't know what an Ironman is, it's a 2.5 mile swim followed by a 112 mile bike ride followed by a marathon as fast as you can do it. And so this thing's in Nice, France, on the Tour de France course with the hills and everything. So we'll see how we hold up. But there's one thing I will tell you. No matter what, I will cross that finish line if I've got to crawl across that finish line and finish that thing. So
yeah, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will.
So that's the other side of it. The last lesson, there's a ton of them, but the last one I'll give, kind of my top 3 for today, is that the littlest things make the biggest difference. So the thing that when I did my first race, I was 3 miles into the run and my legs locked up. I literally tried to like pick my leg up to run and it wouldn't pick up anymore. I'm like, what is going on? I like was walking and like, what is going on? And a guy that was next to me, he's like, have you had any salt? I'm like, what do you mean have I had any salt? He's like, have you taken any salt? I'm like, well, I drank some Gatorade and stuff. He's like, no, have you taken in, like, what's your salt intake been like today? I'm like, what do you mean? I didn't know anything about nutrition. So when you are endurance racing and going for that long, your body needs a lot of extra nutrients and a lot of fueling, right? In fact, for someone like me, I need to be taking in over 400 calories an hour during the race
Wow.
to be optimized nutrition wise. And then you also need especially if it's hot, a lot of sodium intake to replenish the sweat and the salt. Gatorade won't do it. So what happened to me is that I got in a situation where I didn't have any salt left and it was locking up my muscles. So I got some salt and actually that's what allowed me to finish that race. So from that point forward, I became a student of nutrition for the race, the little things, right? So I've got my races are mapped out almost to the minute of when and what I eat.
Interesting, man.
To ensure that I have the right fueling and nutrition. And that's one great lesson for business. It's the things that we don't necessarily want to do, but we know we need to do that can make the biggest difference. So, for example, writing out that SOP that you know you've needed to do forever so that you can, pass it along for somebody else to take that off your plate so you don't do it anymore, so that you can scale and grow. Things like that, in your business. So I always say one of the best places that I look for, like if I'm consulting for a business or looking at a business, I always look at what process do they have? What is it keeping them from scaling? And it's usually the little things that they don't want to do that they need to, take care of so that they can, be able to scale and grow and be able to duplicate and everything else so they can have a true business and not just a job that has been created. Right. So that's another piece that's really important, I think.
These are like your 3 expert action steps that I told you about. You just gave them to me right now.
I've got a few more. I've got a couple more for you at that. If you want.
I'll take them. I'll take them. But I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. So, interesting. My lady, I work with my lady. We've been together for 14 and a half years. She is a running freak. She's done like 23 marathons and God knows how many half marathons.
Good for her.
And then, 2012, 2013, she said, I want to go do a Guinness World Record. I go, what? She said, I'm going to run 12 hours on a treadmill and run the greatest distance a woman has run on a treadmill. I'm like, you out of your mind? She said, I'm going to do it. So she did it. She hired a bunch of coaches. And man, there was someone whose job it was to feed her and give her like whatever her drink was, salt and blah, blah, blah. And she said she did it 3 times. She did this 3 years in a row. She set 3 world records doing it. And it was crazy. Like I call her like the feminine David Goggins because she's into this nutty stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then my eldest son, he's 19, graduated high school last year, and he took a job with the coaching company that I hired to get me in shape back in 2023, Feb 2023. And he'd done some training sessions with the owner of the company. He says, yeah, I'm going to offer him a job. And then a month into it, he comes to me, he says, Dad, how are you going to feel about me not going to university and working here full time? I'm like, what? And he said, look, I'm going to save you a bunch of money. They're not going to teach me anything in school that I won't learn here. School is just going to be a party time. I'm going to work. And I said, all right, we'll try it for a year. So this kid is 19, he was 18 at the time. So check this out. He gets up at 4 a.m. Monday through Friday to be at the gym for 5 to train people. He's there till 8 or 9 at night. So 14, 15 hours a day. He's studying, training people, learning, marketing, all that. And then Saturdays and Sundays, he sleeps in till 5 a.m. and he goes in for 6 a.m. and he only works 10 hours each of those days. I added up the hours this kid works, 95 freaking hours a week. He's trains like a beast in the gym. The owner of the company also was a pretty good high school wrestler. So they wrestle in between and do stuff like that. And this kid is all about playing the long game. He wants to work for this fellow until he's 24, 25 years old. And he wants to start his own business. He's focusing on the little details in his own health and fitness, but also in his mindset. Brian Tracy, who I had the privilege of interviewing on my podcast, came on, listens to his goal setting book on repeat every day in the car. And I just got to tell you, hearing about what you're doing, seeing my lady, seeing my son, seeing all these savages around me, it just makes me go, okay, man, you know what? You got to step up your game, Nicky. You're just being too bloody lazy. You're too bloody lazy. The people around you are kicking your ass. So I just wanted to say, man, pretty darn inspiring story, brother. Of
Thank you.
how you did all this. And
it's never all sunshine and lollipops. There are lots of really hard times through all that, and there was times where I had to inject my life savings into companies to keep them going and things like that. That all that stuff happens. It's all part of entrepreneurship and everything else. But you just keep going. You just whatever it takes to keep stepping forward, even as small as step can be. We as entrepreneurs, it's a series of peaks and valleys, and we spend a lot more time in the valleys than we do the peaks. Peaks are so sweet, but you get really good in the valleys, so embrace it.
Yeah. It's adversity that builds you, not success.
Yeah.
That's what people don't get. So Dave, where do you want us to send people, man?
Oh, yeah, I know that's the hard thing, right? Well, you can go two places. I mean, misfitentrepreneur.com. If you want to check out the podcast, follow that, definitely go there. If you're interested in learning how we, do some of the investing side and stuff, 12minutetrading.com. It's 12minutetrading.com. You can check us out. And then, the podcast's everywhere, YouTube, all those places. And then, you can always find me on LinkedIn too. Just search my name, I'll pop up.
Awesome. We'll make sure we put all that in the show notes. We end off each show by asking you, the guest expert, for your top 3 expert action steps in bullet point form. What say you?
All right. So the first one is a formula that I've coined called the DCP formula. And this is basically from everything I've learned over the years, boiled down into something that's very actionable that you can take to every aspect, every area of your life. Okay. And at first it's going to sound like a duh thing, and then I'll explain it. So D stands for discipline, C stands for consistency, and P stands for persistence or perseverance. You can interchange the words. And what is discipline? Discipline is doing the things that you know you need to do even when you don't want to do them, right? Consistency, doing that day in and day out without fail. And then persistence or perseverance. No matter what, even if you're disciplined and consistent, you're going to hit insurmountable roadblocks. You're going to hit plateaus that seem like you're just almost impossible to overcome. And if you're not willing to persist or persevere through them, that's where you're going to stay. It's where you're going to be stagnant. So if you look at every area of your life, and if you're not getting what you want or you're not where you want to be, ask yourself, am I disciplined in this area? If I'm disciplined, am I consistent? If you're consistent, all right, what is it that I have to persevere through? Or maybe it's, hey, I'm not disciplined. Or maybe it's, hey, I'm not consistent. Right? But when I am disciplined, I do really well. How do I get consistent? You can do the same thing with every area of business. You want to figure out where the issue is in your sales area? Look at it through that lens. Customer support, look through it in that lens. It'll tell you everything you need to know. So one little formula can make all the difference there. So that's the first one. And the second one is that, we talked a little bit about it earlier, but your mind is the most powerful thing that you have. It's your biggest either advantage or biggest weakness in your life. What you tell yourself becomes a reality. And the way that the formula I use for this is BETAR. Your beliefs lead to your emotions lead to your thoughts lead to your actions lead to your results. If you take out those middle words and start with the first and last word, your beliefs equal your results. So whatever it is that you believe ultimately is what's going to manifest in your life. So take stock of your beliefs and ask yourself, do I truly believe these things? Right? And then kind of to go with that, the last thing is that most people don't get what they want because they don't know what they want. And the reason they don't know what they want is they've never taken the time to ask themselves and really dig down deep on themselves. So I challenge all of you to spend a day, take a Friday or a weekend day, whatever day it is, and just get a notepad and paper and ask yourself, what do I want? And ask yourself what I believe. And challenge yourself to those first answers, because the first answers that your mind gives aren't the right ones. And dig deep. Why? what's so important about this? Why, right? And figure out what you truly want. And as part of that exercise, the last thing I would say is to ask yourself what your core beliefs are. What is it that you do truly, truly believe in? What are the things you won't sacrifice for anything? I did that a long time ago, and I've got my core beliefs that, I've got them on my board over here, and I come in and, I read them every day or so just to remind myself of those things that are not negotiable for me that I live by. And it gives you a good North Star. So do those three things. It'll make a huge difference for yourself.
Dick, I had a lot of fun having you on the show, my man. God bless you. Thank you for coming on. Looking forward to coming on your show in a few weeks. And knock 'em alive next week in Nice, my brother.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for taking the time with us and listening today. If we can ever, if I can ever be of help in any way, let me know. But Nikki, thank you for putting forth an awesome show, man. This has been great. Good job.
Thank you. You've been a great guest. Makes it easy. And that wraps up another exciting episode of the podcast, The Thought Leader Revolution. To find out more about today's amazing guest, the one and only Dave Lukas, go to the show notes at thethoughtleaderrevolution.com or wherever you happen to listen to this episode, be it iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, Google Play, Audible, or what have you. Until next time, goodbye.
This episode has been brought to you by eCircleAcademy.com, the proven system to add 6 to 7 figures a year to your thought leader practice.